Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the number one source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
What'd you say before the show, Brad? The fat lady's not singing, but she's on stage. The curtains are mostly open. She's done her vocal warm-ups.
Mic's in hand.
Just about there.
She hasn't sung yet.
If last night wasn't the dagger, there's a knife firmly headed towards the chest, you know?
It certainly felt like it. The combination of them blowing it in the last 30 seconds and Montreal tying it in the last 8 seconds of their game. Listen, I'm not one who believes in like omens and superstitions and signs and all that stuff, but come on.
Yeah, it was 40 collective seconds across 2 games, the end of 2 games. 9 seconds left. Montreal was losing in regulation, and 30 seconds left. Detroit was winning in regulation. And both games flipped. Both teams flipped their result in overtime. Montreal gets 2 points. Detroit loses in overtime. And instead of Detroit being within 1 point, they are down 4 points from Montreal. That, like, you know what? The theme of today is none of this is new. It sucks just as much as it's always sucked, but, you know, it is what it is. And it feels worse, definitely, because we've been watching this kind of slowly unfold over the course of a long season. But that was like a little loud from the hockey gods. That was a little bit too, hey, the end of your season is not the same as the end of that team season or the end of another team in the wild card spot season. It's a tough grind and watch right now.
This whole season, I thought maybe the Red Wings and the NHL script writers are just making that one of those like overly sad, emotional dramas. I was wrong. It's a comedy.
It's funny for somebody.
Not us, but a lot of people are laughing.
Look, man, the turnaround doesn't happen until Detroit's at 0.2. According to Money Puck, they're still at 3.7%. They're not at Tigers level yet.
Hey, and if you want to take the optimistic view,
yeah, go on.
The Buffalo Sabres are only 4 points behind the Red Wings. This draft pick could get pretty good.
So if you're deluded and you're hoping for a playoff spot, or if you're deluded and you're hoping for a draft lottery win, you have a sliver of hope either way. This is a great time to have picked up a coffee sponsor. Thank you, Coffee Cult, because boy, do we need it right now.
Yeah. We need the caffeine to bring energy into this show because it's gonna be a wild episode, I think.
All right, folks, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL, and lots more. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, oh my God, that was rough.
What happened?
That was monotonous.
Oh, sorry.
That was like really.
Oh.
And I'm Evan.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't even notice.
You okay?
I'm good.
You know, it's like the people who are closest to you notice when something's off before you do.
I just realized I pet your dogs and now I just touched my eyes. So that's good thing it's the one away from the camera.
We're on a timeline now. We got two-face over here. On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we're going to be recapping Detroit's heartbreaking second loss to the St. Louis Blues, takeaways from that game, and then our usual, where is Detroit at in this race in either direction, conversations about the team, the remaining schedule, and more. More Red Wings news in the goalie pipeline world as Trey Augustine is heading back to Michigan State for another season. What that means for him, his road to the Red Wings, Sebastian Cossa next season, if there are any implications, is some comparables across the NHL, which I think are important to listen to and may dispel some fear that you might have. We'll get into, obviously, NHL news, Alexander Ovechkin and his chase, the NHL's new TV deal in Canada with Rogers, which has big implications. Maybe get into some offer sheet and free agent options for Steve Yzerman and the Red Wings. And then a prospect profile for this episode as we stay with the Swedish flavor, and then more before overtime. Before all that, very quickly, the Winged Wheel Podcast is primarily supported by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast if you want to support the show. You get access to our bonus episodes, which record right after these main ones. Not only do we answer questions that didn't make the main show, we also throw in bloopers, We have it's a fast and loose conversation. It's a good time. We let loose. We tell stories. We just kind of shoot the breeze, but also talk hockey as well. It's a great time. You're also automatically entered into all of our giveaways. We give away 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game, going directly to our Patreon supporters, for example. Additionally, you get access to our Patreon exclusive Winged Wheel Podcast Discord, a phenomenal community that does things like start its own Light the Lamp for the Winged Wheel Podcast Discord version of that. So again, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. Detroit goes into St. Louis, who, I mean, if you weren't paying attention, the hottest team in the NHL, and you're like, well, okay, yeah, of course. When you look at the Red Wings' remaining calendar, you don't even necessarily point to St. Louis as like the hardest matchup that they had, because you're going into the Florida teams and the Carolinas and what have you. But no, St. Louis was the hottest team in the NHL coming into that game. And through 2 periods, thanks mostly in part to, I think, a better defense than the shots on goal tally gave credit for, but mostly Cam Talbot. Through 2 periods, it was scoreless. And you're like, oh my God, Detroit might actually do something here.
Got to take the small victories where you can get them. The offense wasn't generating much of anything, but yeah, they did not look like a tire fire defensively, which against the current version of the St. Louis Blues is an accomplishment. And did Cam Talbot have to make a huge glove save on a 2-on-0? Yes, he did. But nobody's going to be perfect. And I think if you would have polled any Red Wings fan and gave the option, you're going into the 3rd period tied, didn't even matter what the score was, you would take it.
In the 3rd period, about 5 minutes in, J.T. Compher scores on a play that starts from the point, makes it in front. Berggren taps the puck that's kind of bouncing around into the front of the crease area, and J.T. Compher buries it. A very, very easy 9th goal of the season. Detroit goes up 1-0, and I don't want to say from that point on it was an onslaught from St. Louis. Like, they outshot Detroit 37-21, and I think Detroit, for a good chunk of the first half of the game, had like 5 shots on goal. It was actually that thing again where I saw it at 6, and then they took one away. And whenever that happens, I want to say to the in-arena scorekeeper, like, oh, okay, was that 1 shot on goal too much for you? Like, you didn't even want to pad your own goalie stats? Anyhow, the Red Wings, they weren't completely out of it, but especially after that Compher goal, St. Louis really, really took it to Detroit. You know, Detroit's penalty kill showed up that game. St. Louis went 0 for 3, and there's elements to that game that weren't terrible. Goaltending, good. Defense was bending but not breaking. The penalty kill was perfect that night. The offense was god-awful, and that's why it was close. But that last stint there where the goalie was pulled was just, again, nothing new happened. It wasn't some catastrophic single failure of a single player that was atypical. You saw more of what you've been seeing over this final stretch, where players who are either, you know, playing through injury or gas, or just flat out not playing well, or a combination of all 3 of those things, and then just odd decisions, or Detroit playing better teams, and it was just too much. Detroit didn't score on the empty net. St. Louis maintained incredibly high pressure. Too much for Cam Talbot in the end, and St. Louis scores with 30 seconds left in the game.
There was a couple issues that arose in those final couple minutes. We'll get the obvious one out of the way, since it was the big talking point on the internets last night. Patrick Kane out there to defend a lead in the last couple minutes. Hey, we all love Patrick Kane here, but we know what his strengths and his weaknesses are. As much as I can sympathize with McLellan, you're standing there in that situation, you're looking at the backs of these jerseys sitting in front of you, and you realize you only have 1, maybe 2 good options. In that scenario, Patrick Kane's not a top 10 option of guys to go defend a lead. It is what it is. The second issue I had with the last couple minutes is that is probably the most extreme example of prevent defense I've seen.
They went into their shell hard.
There was a moment where just the way the play broke down and where the puck was and the way everyone was aligned, it was a visual of how insanely obvious what they were doing was, because it was literally just a 5-man box. And with all the St. Louis guys rotating around, making plays, and the Red Wings just staying there in their shell. And it's like, okay, I understand that a point shot isn't a high percentage shot, but they're outnumbering you. one of these shots is going to get through. There's going to be rebounds. There's going to be deflections. And Kairou's wasn't a traditional deflection, but it kind of was. So it's like, well, if that's what you're conceding, you better be ready to stop it or defend it. And it was just, I hated the approach there. I hate it. And it burned them.
I think it was a team that was lucky to even be in that spot. I just don't imagine. Like, if that was an average goaltending game for Detroit, they're not even close to being up 1 goal, let alone even tied, I think, at that point in the game. I think you're seeing, players out there who you wouldn't typically see, maybe because who are the better options? Detroit's best players who have been largely bad, especially for good portions of that game. Or, you're going into your prevent defense. Well, what shape is Detroit's defense in right now? What pairing are you looking at right now and saying that pairing is doing great? Is there one? I don't know that you can confidently say there is. You hoped that it would be stolen for them, but I don't think that it was the likely outcome there.
Cam Talbot basically did all he could to try and secure a win for the Detroit Red Wings. So, you just needed something from the Red Wings offense to be some proof of life last night to really put that away. But, the Red Wings were up 1-0 and they were goalieing St. Louis. I still really didn't think St. Louis felt like they couldn't win that game. We see when Detroit played Vegas, and Vegas was very much like, there's a 0% chance we're losing this game. St. Louis gave me the same vibe last night too. So when they finally broke through, it really did kind of feel like all the wind fell out of the Red Wings sails, and ultimately they did lose the game, even though they got 1 point.
Jordan Binnington's playing the kind of hockey that's going to break a really strong team in the Western Conference's heart come playoff time.
That is the worst team to play in the first round.
Can you believe that? Like, of all the matchups that everyone's talking about, Dallas, Colorado, Winnipeg, who's Edmonton going to play, LA, and then St. Louis is going to probably be poised to be a storyline here. If
they have no expectations, no one expects them to win. They've got that chip on their shoulder, the underdog story. They're playing with house money, so whoever they end up playing in the first round will have all of the pressure.
And you love to hate Jordan Binnington, but you can't deny that the time when he's most on is when he has his swagger and when he has his confidence, and that's when he does like completely unholy levels of playoff goaltending. And I say that as thunder booms from above here, so you could tell you're angering or impressing the hockey gods right now. But that's what he does, and especially coming off the Four Nations victory, where essentially in one game he just gained all of that back.
Yep.
I would hate to be the team that faces him. And he had an excellent game against Detroit. Detroit in overtime falls. Seider goes in, pinches along the boards, loses the puck. Play goes down the other way. Nothing doing. You talk about Seider, Larkin, how he played it. Kane out in that last minute, whether that was a good coaching decision. Is Raymond up to 100%? The deep pairs. This is all very much what we've been saying for the last while here. Yeah, you're not technically out of it, and yeah, you can make a run of this with a bunch of good luck, but considering the schedule and the fact that this team just isn't playing great hockey right now, and on top of that, they look worn out and like they're not up to the task of these last handful of games in an 82-game season, I don't blame fans for being frustrated. But also none of this is new at this point. Like, this is kind of what we've been watching, like I said, slowly unravel since Four Nations.
They're chasing the Montreal Canadiens, and if you just flipped on their game last night, you would think the Red Wings were so far removed from the playoffs just based on the vibe and their quality of play right now. Montreal Canadiens a perfect team? Absolutely not, but they're a team who believes that they belong in the playoffs, and they are riding the fans, and they're riding that energy right now. It just feels like two teams going in the opposite direction to me.
I don't ever tell someone how to root for, the team that they like. I through the worst years of this rebuild, I think something that I came to is like, I'm never going to actively root for a loss on an individual game. It just feels gross. And like, it's just, to me, I'm like, it feels like, why am I even watching? I understand the draft lottery, the way it's all set up. It is actually advantageous in a certain context to lose, but that's just not how I do it. Some people want to do that, and I don't begrudge them for that, because they say, well, we're not going to make the playoffs, and realistically, it's better to give yourself better draft lottery odds. One thing I do kind of laugh at, though, is everyone who says, oh, why would they, like, you should go out there and tank, like, try to tank. I'm like, brother, this team's been losing plenty. Like,
We got lots of losses already.
the record has been bad. Trust me, players are never going to go out there and intentionally tank. There's not a lot you can do other than shut down players a little early, which good luck convincing them to do that when you're still 2, 3, or 4 points out. That comes very late in the game. But this team has still been doing a good enough job tanking, even if they're not intentionally trying.
Some effort levels looks like they might be intentionally trying. Not the whole team, but no, I know what you're saying, and I agree with what you're saying. It's just, while you were talking, a thought popped into my head, and
Oh, we're listening. The usual.
yeah, no. It's reciprocal, so I feel like it's only fair.
Huh?
Yeah. No, but I think the reality is, as much as we've tried to hang on to this season, and there's still a sliver of hope, and we've had good stretches, bad stretches, positives, negatives, et cetera, I keep going back to those 7-game win streaks in my head that I think have maybe painted a picture of a team that they are not. And of course, it's absolutely stupid to say, well, if these games they won, they didn't actually win, things would be different. But even if they went,
It's a Ryan Hanna take right there.
yeah, but like, if they even went 5-2 or 4-3 instead of ripping off 7 in a row twice, they're right in the thick of the lottery right now. Like, they are just 2 unrealistic heaters away from being like among the leagues. Definitely the East basement. They'd be behind Boston, who's in last place right now, which that was fun to say, actually.
I think, but the fan base knows that by and large, right? Like,
But
I think you can be rooting for the playoffs in an individual season because, yeah, no matter how things go and how you are on paper, the modern NHL, the second wildcard team is going to be probably not that big of a difference from someone who's in the middle of the lottery pack, right? But you can watch those 7-game heaters and say, this is not a 14 wins across 15 games team or whatever it was, but I still am going to, revel in this and hope that the team can pull it out. I don't think people thought, yeah, this is undeniably a wild card team and they absolutely will make it. We were watching that and going, this is pretty sweet. What a new coach bump. And then some, like, a confluence of really good events in terms of the right parts of the team getting hot at the right time. They're still going to have a tall task, but at least it puts them back in the mix. And that's kind of what happened.
With the wild card teams, it's always a lot of, well, if this stays like this, or if this stays like this, and if is like this.
Yep.
And the Red Wings, all their ifs have disappeared. That's really what it is.
But before the new coach bump, they were terrible. They were a lottery team. And then
like Boston right now.
Yeah. After you want to classify wherever that new coach bump wore off, they're a lottery team again. It literally was that 15 or 16 game stretch that buoyed their whole season. Like, I think it masked how bad this team really, truly is. And like, yeah, they're a wild card team up until now, like at least in contention, but on paper, are they actually a wild card team? And the answer might be yes. I'm watching, and there's certain players who are playing big roles that, and again, this is all painted by we were in the building Saturday night, which obviously highlights things that you see on TV, but looks worse. Like, Justin Hall is not an NHL defenseman. Michael Rasmussen with the puck on his stick is truly something to behold, and not in a good way. And you talk about 3 other forwards who I genuinely didn't even know were in the game that we were at watching with our own eyes Saturday night. Oh yeah, he dressed. I didn't even notice.
If Cam Talbot had an average game last night, I would definitively say Marco Kasper is the best player on this team over the past. Well, actually,
he still is.
He still is.
Yeah. Yeah, the meme you posted was perfect, where it's like, Marco Kasper is currently the best player on the team. Smiley face. Marco Kasper is currently the best player on this team.
He has taken massive strides and has probably exceeded where I think a lot of people would have expected him to this season. So, yeah, is it bad that Marco Kasper is the best player on their team? Yeah, probably, because that means who you thought are the superstar elite players on this team have disappeared. But I also think it's a good thing that Marco Kasper has, sort of blown the ceiling off of his expectations this year.
Yeah, it's a testament to Kasper, and it's an indictment on some of the guys
sure
above him in the lineup. It's at this current moment. I will hear lots of arguments. I will not accept the fact that people are saying Larkin isn't hurt. He is very obviously battling something. He is not himself. I remember the game we were at Boston. I forget which defenseman he tried beating them wide. He wasn't even close to doing it. And it wasn't Boston doesn't have any good defensemen. So it was eye-opening for someone with Larkin's skating ability to look that painfully slow on a rush with your own eyes. And yeah, I mean, there's definitely positives, and I'm not trying to be all doom and gloom here. The doom actually could lead to bigger positives because of the fact that Ottawa has so definitively passed Detroit. Montreal, out of nowhere, is now, quote unquote, ahead of Detroit in their rebuild. And they might get the playoff glory before Detroit does. And Buffalo is catching up to Detroit right now. It's going to force Yzerman to take a long, hard look this offseason as to what this team actually is and who are the actual problems on this team. And he's got more than I think he realizes he has. He might realize now, and there might be more surgery than we would expect in the offseason. Plus, you get the added kicker of maybe a top 10 to 12 pick. So, yeah, this sucks now, and everything around the team right now is all doom and gloom, and there's no real way around that. Every one of you listening has eyes. You've watched the games. You're seeing all the same stuff we're seeing. But I think if the Red Wings had slipped into the last playoff spot and got killed in the first round, there's positives to the playoff experience, but it might not have forced some of the moves that might now come this summer because it masked the problems. Like maybe now they're a little more aggressive on a Marner, an Ehlers, a Tavares, a Marchand, a Gavrikov, pick your free agent of choice. I'm just going through the ones that I like. But it might end up having to happen because of how much it's going off the rails.
Something you were talking about in there made me think about where is this team playing right now? Like I think absolutely there are players who on this current roster, as it's constructed with the support that they have, the coaching that they have, the systems that they're utilizing more or less, I do think there are guys underperforming at the current moment. I think goaltending is its own category of that, right? That would make the biggest impact. But I don't think anything is like out of range of the usual error margins around what this team actually is. Is Montreal ahead of Detroit in the rebuild, or are they just 4 points ahead right now and it's just kind of the normal ebb and flow and like I said, those error margin bars in the season? I think that they're just hot right now, but I don't necessarily put them ahead overall. I think that would be too definitive, but I agree overall, like that they're very firmly in that mix. I think Ottawa, they have the goaltending with Ullmark, and that's the big difference. But Detroit has these competitors who are seizing the moment more in this moment. Sure. Overall, Brad, I do agree. I think about this and I'm like, yeah, you may have been able to get a different result this season to the tune of like 4 or 5 points in either direction based on guys performing a little bit better, goaltending being a little bit better. But things are so tight. Like we're talking about this team like they have 45 points. They have 75, Montreal 79.
Take out those two heaters. You might.
Yeah, no, but that's what I'm saying. Like Montreal has 79 points, Detroit has 75. Based on how they're playing and over the last 8 games, it's not likely that Detroit leapfrogs New York and Columbus and Montreal, but it's still not a chasm, right? Like all of this is within a margin of error. So ultimately what I'm saying is with that surgery that you're talking about, I think all of that was a foregone conclusion even before this, before the heaters started, in the middle of the heaters, when this kind of streak of suck started. All of this was gonna have to happen over the offseason anyways.
You're objectively right, and I agree with everything you said, but just because you're right doesn't mean that's what was going to happen, and that's kind of my point. Montreal's only 4 points ahead. That is not the Grand Canyon. I agree. You want to look at prospect systems and all that stuff and go who has the better rebuild? You can make arguments both ways, no questions about it. But what I'm saying is, at the end of the season, if the standings hold as they are, you're going to see a very definitive line. Montreal in the playoffs, Detroit out. The optics of that, if you're Steve Yzerman and anybody in Red Wings management or ownership, is awful. That is a terrible look, because I think going into the season, everybody had Ottawa, Buffalo, Detroit ready to take the step, and Montreal was still a few years away. If that team that's a few years away now got into the playoffs before you, even if it's by a singular point, the optics are terrible. And What I think that's going to couple with that is I think if the Red Wings squeaked into the playoffs, I don't think we would have got massive surgery on this team. Yzerman's been patient.
Fully disagree.
It needs it, but I don't know if it would have happened. Yzerman, for all his strengths, and patience is a strength, in this instance, it could be a flaw because I'm not convinced that an overhaul would come this offseason.
No, Brad,
And I agree with you. It needs it. Everybody in this bottom six needs to be punted into the sun and replaced with other random bottom six guys, just because I think if you plucked 6 random bottom sixers out of the NHL, it would be an upgrade on this group. The need for top 6 forwards is obvious. The need for defense is obvious. But I think it would have been another offseason of incremental improvement, more of the Perrons and Tarasenko's and less of what you actually need.
They could use a Perron right now. That one,
Yeah,
that one bites. See, this is where I disagree because I think, like Yzerman even said it, he said it with his actions too. He didn't go out at the trade deadline and add, and that he had time. Like there were still more games on the board, right? Like there's still more runway to work with. And the team was trending in the same direction they're trending now, but you would have had more time to make up ground. Like we watched Justin Hall play all year.
He watched Justin Hall for 4 years in Toronto and still decided that was a good idea.
But like at this point, right? And like you see what this team is like with Petrie out, and Petrie's at the end of his career. You can see the regression in 5-on-5 scoring. Like I think you were going to get the motivation to make big moves no matter what. Because if this team got into the playoffs, let's call it what it is, they were going to get in as a last year's Washington Capitals. It would have been a Hail Mary. They would have been a longer shot than the year the LA Kings won from the 8th seed, right? You want to get in for the experience and because anything can happen. Absolutely. But this team with their -25, -23 goal differential is not going to be a force in the playoffs. So I don't actually, this is where I emphatically disagree. I think between December 29th and now, nothing has changed in terms of what Detroit would want internally to do or what the perception is that they would need to do in the offseason. I think the 2 7-game heaters, I think the perception almost unanimously was like, yeah, this isn't a team that's meant to win 7 games in a row twice. It's fun as hell, but this is an anomaly. You can't rely on that.
No, everything you said is right, but I think where we probably agree is, to my point, is the optics of Ottawa and Montreal getting in just make it that much worse. Like it
makes it that much more likely that they're going to go for what you're talking about.
Yeah, 100%. Because now the fan base and everybody's going to be watching you going, is that okay?
Yeah.
Here we are again.
I see the point you're making.
Yeah, it's because again, I have no doubt that Yzerman sees everything you laid out. But is he going to be aggressive enough is my concern. And I think Montreal and Ottawa getting in makes the optics so strong that he almost has to be.
Creates a lot of external pressures, right? Like when a fan base sees someone else getting to take the ball and play with it, the fan base is going to want that ball and play with it as well. So the pressure will be on for sure. I think if the Red Wings roll back with 80% of the roster, but it leaves a spot for Danielson and Mazur, that can help. But my opinion still remains they need to go big game hunting and find that point per game plus type player.
We'll save it for some offseason content, but I want to literally go through a list of players that absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, cannot be on this team next year. And
it's a 7-hour podcast.
It's a longer list than people would like, but it needs to be done. There's too many passengers on this team that don't contribute anything of value.
And that's the one thing that I respect the hell out of about Vegas, even though a lot of the players they got rid of weren't passengers, but it's always like, we're going to get better and we're going to do it by any means necessary. We're going to make a huge move and get Jack Eichel, who is maybe the best centerman in the league right now. It's just incredible what he's doing. So I can respect the hell out of that. And, it can get, I totally appreciate the slow burn, incremental improvement. We're going to step on the gas at the right time. But that gets really hard for fans year after year, especially it's not fair to Yzerman and his front office staff, but the Red Wings fans have basically not seen the playoffs since the podcast started. At some point, the fans just want you to make them, put the gas down and see what happens.
There's always upgrades available. That's basically the Vegas model. Yeah, we like this guy, but if we can get a better version of him, let's do it. Oh, turn Tarasenko into Ryan Donato. Turn Tyler Mott into Noel Acciari. And you can argue if those are upgrades or not, but like they're out there. You can do it. And sometimes it's difficult. And sometimes you might have to overpay a little bit. With the sheer volume of picks and prospects the Red Wings have, they have assets. They have cap space. There's no reason to not be aggressive. Now, I'm not saying go pay Sam Bennett $9 million. But I'm saying it's hard is no longer an excuse. Make the hard moves.
Funniest episode of podcast history when they pay Sam Bennett $9 million.
Well, look back to this day, April 2nd.
Oh my God.
It's just going to be Evan and I staring, grinning at Brad. Slow zoom in on his face.
I specifically said not to do this. Call back to
Steve Dangle macaroni story.
Told him not to do this.
All right, where Detroit is at right now, because I mean, we're going to be having this conversation all offseason. Detroit right now in the wild card race. We'll start there. Montreal in that second wild card spot, 79 points in 74 games. Detroit 3 spots back. Columbus has 73 games, 77 points. New York 74 games, 77 points, and Detroit in 74 games has 75 points. So they are 4 points back with 2 teams between them and Montreal even. They're not out of it, but they're certainly not firmly in it. Up next, they have at home Carolina on Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern, and then on Sunday at home as well, Florida, 5:30 p.m. Eastern. After that, we're going to be back with you with a late night Sunday episode. Tuesday on the road is their biggest remaining game of the season as of right now, if you have any sliver of a hope, and that is thinner than my hairline at the moment. Montreal Canadiens in Montreal on Tuesday night. Again, Florida, Tampa on the road. Dallas is their last home game on Monday, April 14th, and then New Jersey, Toronto, back-to-back, both on the road. So that's what Detroit has ahead. In terms of the other direction, they are 11th in the draft lottery standing, so to speak. So they are 11th from the bottom in the NHL. Behind them, they have the Islanders, 1 point behind. The Ducks, 1 point behind, which is kind of amazing. Pittsburgh is 4 points behind with 1 more game played. And then you have Philly, same thing, 4 points behind with 2 more games played. Buffalo, 5 points behind. Boston, 6 points behind. You're getting at a range there, but
I think Anaheim and Islanders are the realistic. They could catch Detroit and get Detroit all the way up to 9th. I think anything beyond that is reaching a little bit. Not impossible. Like I said, a couple of those teams are in range, but they're also bad teams, so you can't expect them to win a lot. I could see a world where Detroit gets all the way up to 9th, but that'd be about as optimistic as I get that direction.
Shut some players down. If you lose the next game in regulation and then the wild card gets even further away from you, like Montreal, whoever gains ground, shut down whoever you need to.
I think these next 3 games are it. If you go 1-2, hell, even 2-1, but the loss is Montreal, that's curtains. If Larkin's fighting something, shut him down. If you want to get a look at reward someone in Grand Rapids, be like, hey, we're going to give you a cup of tea in the NHL. That's time to do it. Like, it's that Montreal game, I think, is kind of the, I don't know what you want to call it, bookend to this whole thing.
Okay. More on the Red Wings, but first, let's take a quick break and hear from the sponsors of the Winged Wheel podcast. An exciting new one. Back after this. All right. If you're like us and coffee's basically the fuel that keeps you going, whether it's early morning podcasts, late night game rewatches, or just grinding through another rebuild, then you need to check out Coffee Cult. These guys are serious about coffee. They only use specialty-grade Arabica beans from all over the world, and they actually work with their farmers to make sure every single bean is top quality. No joke, they inspect each one, and they won't roast anything that isn't excellent. The result is super flavorful and honestly superstar-level coffee. And get this, they roast to order. So when you place your order at coffeecult.com, your coffee isn't sitting on a shelf somewhere, it's roasted fresh just for you, and then it's shipped out. That's as fresh as it gets. Their dark roast is a go-to. Smooth, heavy-bodied with notes of caramel and chocolate, perfect for cold mornings at the rink. Or try something a little different like the Sumatra with chocolate and brown sugar vibes. And they've got a killer lineup of single origin coffees from places like Colombia, Kenya, Brazil, you name it. Head to coffeecult.com, that's KOFFEEKULT.com, and use the code WWP to get 10% off. And if you spend over $49, shipping is free in the US. That's coffeecult.com, spelled with a K. Drink better coffee. Welcome back. All right, a hypothetical for you two before we get into talking about the goaltending pipeline news that came with Augustine and Cossa. First, I mean, we're going to be talking a lot about offseason targets via trade or offer sheet or signings. I said this in the chat, and there was an obvious answer that came up. But what would you rather have this offseason? And let's take dramatic hypotheticals here. Hypothetically, you add either 2 top 4 defensemen, one of them being guaranteed to be able to play on the top pair with Mo Seider, or 2 top 6 forwards, one of them being guaranteed to be able to play center at a reasonable level behind Larkin.
What does reasonable level mean?
Like they're a second line center and they're not a hindrance, which is probably more than you can say that Detroit has had over the past forever. I was going to count the years there.
My answer is forwards emphatically, and I don't even need one of them to be a center. Like that's the biggest gap on the team, is the hole on the first line that is currently being occupied by the offensive black hole that is Michael Rasmussen, or was before they flipped Larkin and Kasper. And the second line has the same issue going into next season. So I absolutely want to see that short up. I have enough faith in Seider and Edvinsson that they can anchor 2 competent pairs. I do not have any faith in anybody in the roster right now to play that first line left wing spot outside of Alex DeBrincat, which when you do that, nukes the second line.
Here's the thing though, like you're seeing Seider struggle post 4 Nations, especially. Like there's points, and it's over deployment. It's his game isn't progressing, game in and game out. It's not like a linear rise every game. The guy's not immune to having bad games, absolutely. But when you're on an island for that long, you're gonna have really bad moments. Edvinsson is still young. Like when you watch the mistakes that these guys are making here and there, none of it is like, oh wow, this is a big red flag. I'm concerned the player is actually all of a sudden terrible. I don't think that's the case. I think that's part of when people just get too fixated on the negativity of the moment. But there is something to be said of you offer them some more support and you allow their games to grow even more. Like I don't think we've seen everything we can from Seider. I don't think even close. But you need to get him a true top pair line mate. And you can't just sequester him and Edvinsson on the same pair as the Red Wings are constructed right now. So if you add 2 top 4 D, like I understand what you're saying, and you're probably not wrong. I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here. But if you had 2 top 4 D, that is a complete 180 on one of the biggest problems, I would say the biggest problems for the Red Wings since this rebuild started, which is their defense has been god-awful.
Since the rebuild started, yes. This season, it's their 5-on-5 offense. Look at the literal last game a couple days ago against St. Louis. The defense against one of the hottest teams in the NHL was adequate. They were able to system it up so that they could be competent. Yeah, they needed Talbot to be good, but your goalie always has to be good. They couldn't score a goal. And that has been a problem definitively all year. And it's not that you're not allowed. You can make one change and improve the defense right now. Johansson looked better with Edvinsson than Petrie has lately. There's an upgrade. You go out, if you get no new top 4 defensemen, but you get a competent bottom pair, well, now you don't have to ride Seider and Edvinsson's minutes so hard. You can take a little bit off them because that third pair goes out there and you're not screwed like they absolutely are right now. And again, do you know what eases up the defense a little bit? Every lead you get isn't a 1-goal lead where they're not getting another goal. Imagine having a 4-1 lead in the third period of a game. Be great. The defense will feel... Yeah. The defense would feel much more stress-free. And it takes a weight off their shoulders, which, hey, mental side of the game, it affects the physical side of the game. So
Brad says forwards.
I really don't think there's a wrong answer to this. Maybe that's an indictment on the Red Wings roster as a whole.
That's the real answer, right?
Do we need a
there.
Vezina caliber goalie? Yes. Do we need top 4 defense? Yes. Do we need top 6 forwards? Yes. But if I had to pick, I would go with forward group right now. I think the 5-on-5 offense has been atrocious this year, and this team has really been sort of carried by, at one point, the best or the top 3 power plays in the league, and they were just getting saves all the time. I think if they could bring in top 6 forwards who are productive, whether it's a center or not, I'm not sure that's all that important. I think it would help you slot guys a little bit lower in the lineup. Like, as much as I love Patrick Kane and his ability to produce, like, he's still one of the top producers on the team. Once again, maybe that's an indictment on the team. You'd be able to slot him down a little bit lower in the lineup, utilize his skill set more effectively rather than asking him to go up against some of the best top line or best second line guys in the league, and really testing his hip for the golden era of his career. I think if you were able to just inject 2 top 6 forwards, you'd be able to move everybody down into their appropriate spot, and everything would just sync up so much better, and you wouldn't have to just ride Larkin and Raymond to dust.
Yeah, that slotting thing is exactly it. Like,
and I could have that same sentiment for the defense too. Like, if you just give us some meat and potatoes defense guys who can just play better minutes and are responsible, you wouldn't have to grind Seider and Edvinsson into dust either.
Like, we talk about how many players are genuinely, like, they shouldn't be, they're very washed, to put it gently. Justin Hall, like, there's no beating around the bush there. Like, he shouldn't be anything more than a 7th defenseman, like, nuclear option. You have to play him for appreciable minutes. Tarasenko, what we've seen this year, like, he's not doing even depth scoring. But then you talk about Rasmussen. Rasmussen, if he's your 4th line winger, excellent, perfect. You talk about guys who you fixate on the contract, but they're like, Compher down the lineup is just fine. Like, you're pushing these players down the lineup into appropriate slotting, and then, as Evan said, your matchups get better too, and things start to fit into place a little bit better. You're not riding guys and over deploying them as much. Things get a lot better fast. So, I mean, to go against my own devil's advocate argument earlier, I do think there's more to be done there on offense right now, and there's more to be gained. It hurts my soul seeing yet another patchwork defense season. The real answer is it's not one or the other. You're going to have to try to make moves on both sides of the coin there. Anyways, just a hypothetical I want to put out there. I wanted to see if anyone had a differing opinion. More Red Wings news. Trey Augustine. We thought it was about 50-50 whether he'd go pro. He is running it back with the Spartans, going back to MSU for another season, wants that national championship, wants to win it all. Obviously won Big Ten this season, but heartbreak in the frozen frenzy for the Spartans is going back yet again. And some folks were a little concerned about that. They thought, okay, a 3rd season in the NCAA, what does this mean? Well, first and foremost, I just want to get it out of the way, and we can talk about it more on the other side of this, but I don't think this explicitly means anything for Sebastian Cossa. Like, I think what his timeline is completely dependent on how he performs next preseason and at training camp and everything. But for Trey Augustine, I'm not concerned by it. I would have, of course, loved to have seen him go pro and play for the Griffins sooner. Absolutely. But it's also, he wasn't going to be at the Red Wings next season or the season after. Like, he's a young goalie who is still a ways away. Goaltending is the hardest position to come in and break into the NHL with, and it's extremely hard to perform well as a young player. You never want to over-ripen prospects, but the prospects that need the most ripening are goaltenders. It's a strong program at Michigan State. I don't have a terribly big problem with it.
No, I think it's probably the right decision for him, because if you start on the less important part of this, the depth chart. If you're Augustine looking at this going, okay, Mrazek and Talbot are in Detroit next year, Cossa's the starter in Grand Rapids, how much am I actually going to play? Right? He'd be Cossa's backup until there was an injury or a severe underperformance. All right, I could see that, but even at that, he dominated the NCAA this year, but he's still got room to grow. And he's so naturally talented that he could take next season, really try to refine some weaknesses in his game if he identifies any, and still be a great, great goalie and, backstop a team that's probably going to contend for the Big Ten and the Frozen Four again next year. So, I know you've got it up there. There's a long list of star-level NHL goalies who spent 3 years in the NCAA.
Thatcher Demko, Jake Ottinger, Jeremy Swayman, Ryan Miller, Corey Schneider, to name a few. Cam Robinson posted that.
And if Augustine becomes any of those, we're thrilled. So I am not worried in the slightest that he's going back. I fall on the side of, I actually like this. This is what he should be doing. This is what's best for his development.
And the NCAA is only getting better. There may be a massive injection of talent this offseason with Gavin McKenna having interest in the Big Ten. So the NCAA might look completely different next year, and this might just be the perfect spot for him. Like, I'm not sure I see the value in him going to a team like Toledo when he could just go back to college. They don't play as many games. He'd get more time in the gym, more time to practice, refine his game. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially from, just a comfort perspective as well.
Sean Shapiro posted something in an article on Shap Shots. I'll link it. And it was an interesting story. Jake Ottinger being one of the goalies that I just named. Sean wrote, this situation reminds him of what happened when he covered the Dallas Stars and they had two goalie prospects, one being Ottinger, who had a great save percentage with Boston University, and then Colton Point, who with Colgate put up an even better save percentage in .944. Unbelievable season. Both of them were backups for their countries at the World Juniors. So, Dallas fans were looking at these two prospects and saying, one of them is going to make it. They're kind of neck and neck here. They took two divergent paths, and we know Ottinger's name, and a lot of people don't know who Colton Point is at this point. Colton Point admitted that he rushed to sign because he wanted to kind of get ahead of Ottinger in that race to try to go pro. It's hard for goalies. It's extremely hard. I encourage you to read the whole article, but Ottinger went back to Boston University, wanted that one more run the same way for Augustine. He wants that one more run with the Spartans, and look how that turned out. Obviously, that's just one example. It's one anecdote, but I think the comparisons are strong here, and the advantage for goalies, like, you're not missing out on NHL time by going back to college early, right? Like you both said, he's playing, he is the guy where he is, and it's not like he's playing in a joke of a league. He is going to be getting a lot of minutes in a strong league that's only getting stronger, in a good program where he's already excelled. So I don't even think this pushes back when you could see Augustine make the Red Wings if he's going to. Goalies are voodoo, if you want to say that, but this is just, he'll be wearing green next season. That's all. And for Cossa, I mean, it makes the Red Wings' life a little bit easier in Grand Rapids because it's not just those two in the pipeline. Obviously, there's a lot of other strong goaltenders. But with Cossa, it's, again, he's going to decide where he plays. He can make Yzerman make a hard decision next season if Cossa comes in and he's indisputably the best goalie for Detroit, or way better than the third best goalie in camp, so to speak. So does this make it more likely that Cossa lands in Grand Rapids? Single digit percentage points, maybe. I just don't see how it affects it realistically. That's not decided until the offseason. All right, let's get into let's do our NHL news right now. Alexander Ovechkin, 4 goals away from breaking Gretzky's record. Do you think he does it this season? He's at 891, 4 away from breaking it. Coming down the stretch here, and if he has an empty net to break it, to tie it and or to break it, if you're Ovi, do you do it, and what do you think he would do?
You got to do it. You never know. Hockey's such a random sport. You might not score again, so you can't pass up on any opportunity. I know he makes goals look easy in the NHL, but goals aren't easy in the NHL, and he probably knows that better than anybody. So if he's at a road game on Long Island staring down an empty net, you got to take it. You just have to. So
that sounds horrible. That's a nightmare scenario.
I did not make that scenario up off the top of my head. Look at the schedule. It's very much in the cards.
He's
Columbus as well, I think.
And he cares about it, right? Like, this is important to him. Was it Gordy where he didn't want to score on an empty net? Like, for these big milestones, he doesn't want it to be an empty netter. But
yeah, they go Hurricanes, Blackhawks, Islanders, Hurricanes, Jackets, Islanders, Penguins.
I don't know.
The only good scenario there in terms of opponent would be Penguins on the last game of the season. That would rock.
He could do it on Friday against the Blackhawks.
Oh my God, a 4-goal game to do it.
Just looks over at Bedard. That's how it's done.
Poor Connor, man.
You see Ryan Leonard join the Capitals, and he's already like, Ovechkin's already his big dad. He's like so proud of him. Ryan Leonard laid out somebody last night.
Oh yeah.
Goes back to the bench. Ovi's just dying. Biggest grin on his face.
Yeah.
Imagine starting your NHL career. There's Ovechkin going for the race, and he's in your corner cheering you on. It's crazy.
And in the middle of it, Ryan Leonard signs obviously with Washington, and Ovi's like, all right, well, next game's in Boston where you've been living. Take us to your favorite bar.
Yeah, I saw that video too.
Ryan Leonard, born in January of 2005. What happened later that year?
January 2005.
So let's say around
2005.
Fall of 2005. What happened?
I have no idea.
Alex Ovechkin made his NHL debut.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah. That's how long this guy has been scoring, and he's not really lost a step.
That is insane.
It would be kind of like poetic based on the narratives if he does it on an empty net. But yeah. Anyways, okay. Other NHL news. The Canadian TV rights were locked up by the NHL for 12 years, a dozen years, $7.7+ billion US dollars, that is, for those rights. They stay with Rogers, so Rogers Sportsnet, that whole business, that's not going to be a big shift for those watching in Canada. There's still some ancillary kind of sidecar deals to be had here. One additional night per week evidently is up for grabs, as well as French rights. Amazon, I would expect to be a big player in that additional night per week. Those broadcasts have actually gone extremely well. I think people have been very happy with them, so I think they would continue to be in the mix there. But the NHL continues its kind of model of long-term stability. It's big bucks, of course, but I know Alan Walsh was online saying, that's too long to lock yourself. You're locking yourself out of big increases. You're locking yourself out of, inflation driving.
Spoken like a true agent.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, yeah. Who wouldn't want stability in the middle of all this economic stability that we have going on right now?
And that, I think, is what drove the league to do this. One, that's their habits. That's what they've always done. But two, you're potentially facing with the not geopolitical, the economic geopolitical loom ahead, the fog between Canada and the States. And these Canadian teams, they earn money in Canadian dollars, but they pay the players in US dollars. And if anyone's looked at the difference in those $2, there's a big disparity that's only grown bigger since this all started. And so the NHL is looking at this saying, yeah, Toronto's always going to be fine. Montreal's always going to be fine. What about Winnipeg? What about these teams that aren't so easy to drive in that revenue? So this protects them, I think, a little bit as well, to have that security. You don't want to add another element of volatility. So that's, I think, a consideration in there. I will say, there was a lot of people who weren't thrilled.
Well, if you're not happy with the current way the NHL is broadcast, I think 12 more years of it would make you a little bit leery of this deal, because I think they just want strong control of the broadcast rights. So yeah, I can understand why fans are not all that thrilled. I don't see how consumption will become easier.
If you were wondering if the whole blackouts, it's hard to watch the games, it's convoluted thing was real on both sides of the border, it is. All right, let's finish out here with our prospect profile. Last episode, we did Eklund. This episode, we are going to get to a name that's probably higher on most lists, although they seem to be converging a little bit more than we thought they would. But Anton Frondell is a name that some people have as high as their top 3. Some people have him a little bit lower, maybe closer to 8 or 9. But Anton Frondell out of Djurgården, left shot, what does he bring? What position could he realistically play? Do you see him as being an actual center? And is he a top 3 level player here? Or is he more of like the kind of 5 to 7 or 8 range?
He's closer to the top 3 in my mind than he is to where Detroit will pick. So I'll get that out of the way now. He's played mostly wing in the Allsvenskan, but he's played center, I think, at some of the international events and possibly even when he was in junior. I mean, his toolkit suggests he should be playing center. He's big, he's competitive, great hockey IQ, plays with pace, lot of skill. Like, there's, outside of the injuries, which I think he had 2 major ones last year, a knee, and I forget what the other one was. There's a lot to like about this prospect. Coming back from the injuries last season, he had a rough start to this season. You could just tell the conditioning wasn't there, and he was, I don't even know if it was conditioning. You could just tell he was out of rhythm, out of sync. He wasn't himself. But over the last few months, he's come on real strong. The numbers have followed. I mean, he's one of my favorites in this draft just because of, everything you would like in a skilled forward this guy has. He's not one-dimensional. He's well-rounded. The competes high. He's got size. Like, just a really, really intriguing prospect for the NHL.
Yeah, it was super hard to find a lot of criticisms of his game. Like you said, Brad, like, he's already 200 pounds and he's 17. He's got NHL frame already. He's got the pace. He can play at NHL speed. He's got an incredibly accurate, but also an insanely quick shot. Not only, puck speed, but release speed. And he's just super smart. And he already plays great at both ends of the ice. I think there's, maybe a little bit more that he can be a little bit more physically impactful, but he doesn't shy away from that. Yeah. Is he in the top 3 for me? No, but I think he's, I could understand why teams would fall in love with him because I can absolutely see him being an NHL impactful top 6 center on a team for a long time.
Yeah, his dynamic elements are what do it for me. Like, he has a lot of the traits that, for example, with Eklund, we talked about a lot of the same things, the compete, the plays the game absolutely the right way, but doesn't kind of give it all up offensively, so to speak. But Frondell has that step further where the puck skills, what he's able to do with the puck on his stick, and that release, that shot, the way he kind of paces out the game and reads the ice in front of him. I agree with you, Brad. I see all the traits where he should be able to stick as a center if that's a guy who can do it.
And he's not a one-dimensional producer either. Like, he's not the type of guy who, scores from below the goal line or, builds speed through the neutral zone and just burns guys. Like, he's not afraid to take the puck into the middle of the ice. He's not afraid to let his shot rip and see if he can beat goalies. So I just really, barring some sort of catastrophic injury, I just can't see how he won't carve out a extremely successful NHL career.
The playmaking as well, yeah. Like, he's this guy. I can honestly hear the argument for top 3. Like, if you want the forward, and let's say Schaefer is not going to be someone that you're going to be interested in based on what your team's needs are, or let's say he's off the board, you can make a case for him. I think it wouldn't be insane to say him over Higgins or even him over Misa. I don't know that necessarily I would right now, but I don't think he's out of that mix. Frondell is a super intriguing player to me, and you can hope and dream. I just don't realistically see him falling to where Detroit is likely to pick. He's simply too good.
No, the best case scenario here is the Red Wings bottom out. They get 9th overall. He falls to 6 or 7, and then you're in range that maybe a trade-up's possible there. But short of that, I have a hard time seeing him getting to Detroit, wherever they might end up picking.
And Detroit will have eyes all over this guy with their European scouting as well. Like, not that he's a hidden gem. Everyone is watching Frondell this season, but if you're going to be banging the table to trade up for someone realistically who's falling to like even 5, like, he's poised to be pretty high on that list based on how things are as of right now, as of, April 2nd projected to play out. But yeah, Anton Frondell is, I mean, if you're concerned about injuries, that's one thing, but overall, that's not really a guy who has too many flaws to his game, and it's not really common to see if you think, oh yeah, skilled European forward, a lot of people think small, soft, but no, not him. He's, I think Evan was right. He's got that NHL frame and plays like it too. So kind of does it all.
Well, if he goes 5 or 6, that means he goes to Boston or Buffalo. So we'll get to see a lot of him.
Oh, who invited you?
I don't know.
Yeah, actually, we don't
Just
know.
show up.
That's Anton Frondell. I would love if he's a conversation that we're having leading up to the draft. That would be phenomenal news. Phenomenal news.
You'd solve a lot of problems.
Wow, we say that a lot, huh? That we got to put that on a shirt. This guy, that would solve a lot of problems for the Red Wings.
It goes back to our would you rather 2 top 6 forwards or 2 top 4 defensemen. It's like, I'll take both, please.
Like when they ask Homer if he wants 1 steak or 2 in first class, he says, "Well, can I have both?" Okay. We're going to take a quick break to hear from the sponsors of the Winged Wheel podcast. And when we're back, the final segment of the show.
We're going to overtime.
Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/Winged Wheel podcast. If you want to join the Dub Club, the bonus episodes, the giveaways, the Discord, all of that and lots more. And you make us really happy because you allow us to do all the stuff that we do, include hosting Winged Wheel podcast nights in partnership with the Detroit Red Wings and the Grand Rapids Griffins. You allow us to, continue to try to make the show bigger and better and do other cool stuff that we have on the horizon. So again, patreon.com/Winged Wheel podcast. Chimkim Nutgit says, I believe Brad said before the season that the Wings could be challenging for a wild card spot or close to the bottom of the division. Who would have guessed that the or would be an and at this point in the season? Are we officially stuck in the purgatory of the mushy middle? Or if not, is it closer or further away than it feels after the season we've had? I've seen this, like the whole mushy middle purgatory notion, and I understand the sentiment. I can't say definitively no, right? You don't know yet, but I think this is just a more symptom of we've been watching this unravel for 10, 20 plus games. I think rebuilds aren't linear. And yeah, this is a lateral step at best from last season, the most generous interpretation. But I'd be hesitant to say before this offseason, we see how it goes, that this is the mushy middle. Maybe I'm an optimist, but I don't go that far yet.
I'd kill for the mushy middle. Those teams make the playoffs occasionally. We're not there yet.
You're within a margin of error at this point.
If the mushy middle is a house party, we're in the driveway.
Okay.
Yeah, that's about right.
Ryan Doxed Ryan says, what do you think it would cost to get Pasternak, and would you be comfortable pulling the trigger? A lot, and yes.
1,000% yes.
If you're not talking Raymond, Seider, there's no point in including Larkin in a trade either, because then you're just kind of replacing one hole with another.
If Boston wins the lottery, they aren't interested in that at all.
No. But I'm dealing top prospects. I'm dealing top picks. I'm moving a lot for Pasternak.
Oh, absolutely. The top 4 on the roster right now, if you call that Larkin, Seider, Raymond, Edvinsson, I think beyond that, everything's on the table.
Dan Stonehands Cleary brings up a good point about Augustine that we should have honestly addressed when we talked about him. Says, is Augustine trying to get out of the Wings organization by returning to MSU? Keep up the great work, fellas. So the notion here being that if Augustine goes back for even another season after this next one, then he could, not sign with Detroit and go the route of other big names, Fox, etc., who went elsewhere in the NHL rather than sign with the team that drafted them. I don't get any sense that this is the case. I'd be pretty surprised. I guess anything can happen, but that's not how this one reads. The Dandy Man Can says, I heard you guys mention Lindgren like he's another Steve-style guy, and maybe not necessarily what we need, but I'm also seeing Avalanche articles praising him for what he's done since he's got there. New York had him on their top pair with Fox. Wouldn't he be an upgrade over Sherratt? Is there any other lefty free agent who we would rather get besides Gavrikov? Just like the slotting issue you talked about with forward, getting a lefty better than Sherratt would help every pair below, even if the new guy isn't a true top pair D. Yeah, that's the thing. I think Lindgren would absolutely be a net positive for the current Red Wings blue line. I'm just thinking about what his contract demands will be.
That's the thing. So first point is there's going to be a lot of genuinely good players on the market this offseason that we are going to say we would pass on. And it's not because we think they're bad players. It's because we know what they're going to get paid, and they are absolutely not worth that. Andrew Kopp, if you're paying him $2.5 million, you're thrilled. You're paying him $5.5 million, you hate it. You know what I mean? Now, here's the thing with comparing Lindgren to Sherratt. Lindgren is Sherratt. Like, that's my hot take. When you put them on a great team surrounded by great defensemen, they can absolutely tread water. More than tread water, they're serviceable. Like, when Sherratt was in Florida, he was excellent. When he was Shea Weber's D partner in Montreal, he was excellent. Now he's on a weaker team, and you can see him struggling. Lindgren strikes me as the exact same problem, except he's going to make more money than Sherratt.
There's like elements there in terms of the physicality, whatever, and maybe if you have both, it's a little bit better. I don't know. It all comes down, like, I think everyone's right here. It just does come down to slotting. D-Boss's D-Boss says you guys have been critical of the team's mental state or fragility for a couple of years now. The coach has been changed, but the soft team mentality has remained the same. At what point do you hold Larkin accountable for that as captain of the team? Similarly, how is Steve held accountable for the shortcomings in the pro scouting department? I'm not saying there's, absolutely nothing Larkin could be doing better, but, and this could just be the way that I think, but I don't really think captains make that big of a difference on the ice. Mentality-wise, yeah, absolutely. Getting guys prepared, stopping absolutely catastrophic locker room situations, for sure. But, I don't know, are we having this conversation if Detroit has another top 4 defenseman and another top 6 forwards? I don't think people are thinking about Larkin's leadership. And it's going to sound like I'm, bailing the guy out, but I think there's bigger issues on this team before you start getting into the minutia of who's wearing the C's and the A's. Could just be me, but I don't know.
Everybody shares the blame, but the percentages are not allocated equally. The roster is the biggest problem. That's Stevie. Then you have the coaches. And then I will say to some degree, yes, Larkin, because I view that as an entire leadership group in the Red Wings being a problem. One player can't suddenly make a team mentally strong. But if you took the 5 quote unquote veteran leaders on this team and put them together, they should be able to enact change within a locker room. So is Larkin part of that? Yes. But it's not just him.
This one from Peter Babby says, what about Nyes as an RFA offer sheet candidate?
I like him. I would love it. Again, my whole thing with offer sheets is you got to get stupid creative so that it's not just a quick match for the other team. Like, what would you have to pay him this year for the Leafs not to match? 8, 7? Like, you'd have to screw them against the cap.
Real problem for the offer sheets now is that the cap's rising. The cap was staying reasonable or very small increments year over year. I think you could find scenarios where teams are having to assign big guys and their RFAs could be exposed. But the way the cap's going, I just don't think offer sheets are going to be all that effective, unfortunately.
All right, last one here, and this is an important one. Andy Hardcore says, just want everyone to keep Northern Michigan in their thoughts and prayers. There's thousands of us up here with no power. The ice storm devastated the power grid up here, and it's going to take time to rebuild. Thank you all, and let's go Red Wings. Absolutely, for everyone who's been affected by the storms and this insane weather, we're thinking of you, keeping you in our thoughts and prayers. Hopefully everyone's doing okay. Absolutely insane weather that we've been all having. All right, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast. We're going to be back with you on Sunday after the Florida game. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you to Coffee Cult for sponsoring the Winged Wheel Podcast. Very excited to have a coffee sponsor. Make sure you check out the link in the description or the one you saw on your screen. To all of our supporters on Patreon, we could not do this without you. Patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast if you want to support the show. And if you want to help us out, but Patreon's not for you, just wherever you get your podcast, subscribe. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, subscribe, turn notifications on, leave a review or a rating with the stars or the thumbs up, tell a friend about the show. All of that helps a ton. To our name level supporters on Patreon, you are the absolute best. Arjun Shanker, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, THL Champ, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Glenn Brabham, Matt Keeler, Sea Lion, Matthew M. Rice, Adam Rose, Adam Zuiza, Admiral Matt S. of the Cheesebag Navy, Alex Toger, Anna Sleeman, Asher Killian, Beer League Legend, Best James Bond, Carl Brutinen Analuski, CB55, Citizen High Five, Clip Clop Nene, Connor Scovey, Craig Kibble, Danny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, DJ Denton, Eric Hill, Give Blood Fight Probert, Goose Looney's Drinking Club, Grand Rapids Girly, Griffin God Creatives, Hatrick Sandine Pelika, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al-Qassem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, James McLean, aka Jambo, Jeff Pridemore, Jennifer Morris, John Ingalls, Jonathan Miller, Kaylin Wood, Lunchbox, Mark Hernandez, Marty, Matt McKay, Michael Edlin, Mr. Kuzi, Oompa Loompa Pekkanen, Podgy713, R.A., Richard Perkins, Roy Donk, Sam Bankson, Stephen Ortlieb, That's What I Appreciate About You, Wings Fan in Chicago, Eiserplan Stan, Aaron Hudson, General Andy Bohanna of the Cheesebag Army, Aaron, Albert Johansson, All Motor No Hands, and Stanislavski, Another Future Consideration, Baked Starfish, Bellingham Acid Balls, Bex, C.E. Hayes, Chris Felinsky, Commander Ben Barron of the Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Leighton, Corey Prida, Darren Fick, Drop the Puck, Dylan Larkin, Trade Sacrifice, Eric Nance, Evan Beckner, Evans Ham Radio, Gene Sullivan, Grepsky, Griffey Boy, James Pridemore, Johnny Page, Jeremiah Dobo, Jim, JM Rhapsody, Josh Yelton, Chaotic Monkey, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Linda Hull, Lonnie Zone, Lucas Raymond, Mitch Minier, Morning Wood, Ophelia, As Good As It Gets, Roy Mudbutt, Ryan M, Sandy P, Right Hand D, Say You Can't Sleep Baby, I Know That's Me, Big Chungus, Steven, That Other Guy, The Hodag, The Hat 123, Trent Thorough, Wings Fan in St. Louis, Scott, and your second favorite patron. Thank you all so very much. We'll talk to you Sunday night.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at Winged Wheel Pod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram.